Members of the fourth state, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this press conference. We, the members of parliament, from the refugee hosting communities in Garissa County, having hosted refugees for over 3 decades, and our people having shown great magnanimity and hospitality, would like to air our displeasure and anger on recent occurrences as relating to the conduct of the Principal Secretary for Immigration Services and the United Nations and the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. The UNCHR plan, which basically is the one of saying integrating the hosting communities and the refugees, currently being spearheaded by the Department of Refugees and UNHCR, is undertaken without any form of public participation and engagement with political leadership, local civil society organizations, the refugee hosting communities, the refugees themselves, and all other critical stakeholders as provided under Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Instead, the department has at best been engaging itself occasionally with the county government of Garissa. This gross violation of the principle of the Constitution cannot be allowed to continue. We therefore demand for cessation of all talks being undertaken under the UNCHR plan or the integration plan before substantive engagements is done with the refugee hosting communities as well as all the other stakeholders I mentioned. The Refugee Affairs Secretariat under the leadership of the Principal Secretary, Professor Bitok, is highly mismanaged and a den of nepotism and favorism. It is important to mention that 5 out of the 6 recently recruited Assistant Commissioners of Refugee Affairs hail from Professor Bitok's community. 5 out of 6. 5 are Kalenjins, 1 is from another community. That all the personnel in the department, save for 2, hail from other than the refugee hosting affairs, refugee hosting areas. Professor Bitok therefore runs DRS, the Department of Refugee Affairs Services, as a close-knit cartel of stooges. We therefore demand for immediate cancellation of all the recent recruitment spending and independent human resource audit by an independent government entity. As for UNHCR, we regret that UNHCR has taken for granted the generosity and magnanimity of the refugee hosting communities for the longest time, for hosting refugees in an ecologically fragile ecosystem that has left the area completely degraded and the environment destroyed. The refugees rely on energy and shelter from immediate environments. Thus, they have continually degraded our environment in search of fuel wood. All the wildlife that was there in the Dab and Fafi constituencies are gone. The refugees now are going all the way to 100 miles from the refugee camps themselves to go and get firewood. UNHCR has not provided any support to address this area. Less than 2%, usually allocated for energy provision, is far less than the needs of the refugees. Of the budget of the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, less than 2% is allocated for energy. We find it bizarre that a UN agency that ought to espouse the highest standards of international environmental principles operates with wanton disregard to the refugee hosting areas' environment. The irresponsibility of the UN Refugee Agency has occasioned refugees to rely on firewood fetched from all over, as much as 100 kilometers, 100 miles in every direction. In the world where refugees use firewood as their source of energy, the Dab and Hagadera and what do you call Kakuma are the only refugee camps in the world where firewood is used for energy. In any other one, they are given ethanol, am I right? Sure. They're in any other, all over the world. Ethiopia, just next door here. Dolo. The refugees are not allowed to go and cut trees. The UNHCR supplies them with ethanol for their energy. The United Nations World Food Programme uses heavy trucks to transport goods to the Dab and has completely destroyed the road network and has led to areas being cut off from road transport during this El Nino period. Despite decades-long calls for tarmacking the Dadaab-Garissa road in order to sustainably address the perennial road network, the WFP has not, and the other UN agencies, offered to undertake the most minor roadworks. Instead, they have worked towards exacerbating the already critical situation by putting huge and overloaded trucks on a poorly maintained roads that are not all-weather. Finally, during these trying times, when a severe drought is closely followed by flash floods occasioned by the onset of El Nino, UNHCR, which is the lead agency within the refugee camps complex, hasn't found it necessary to initiate an emergency response program to the refugee hosting communities of Fafi and Dadaab. We find it utterly unconscionable that UNHCR hasn't found it appropriate to trigger an emergency response to alleviate the loss of lives and the livelihoods for the refugee hosting communities, as well as the refugees themselves in those areas we mentioned. We therefore urge that first, the government takes immediate steps to address the issues that we have now said in as far as the management of the Department of Refugee Affairs is concerned, or Refugee Services. For your information, out of 70 employees who work at the headquarters here for DRS, only 2 of them come from northern region. Not even from Dadaab and Fafi, but from northern region. Only 2. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees has got an office here, and I think they employ more than 2,000 people. You'll not find a single person. There's only one person that we know who works in the offices of UNHCR here, and that's my own son, and I have to declare that interest, who basically is one of the junior staffs. Nobody else comes from Dadaab, nobody else comes from Fafi, and hardly anybody comes even from Kakwa. The Turkanas are as marginalized as we are. Just the other day, Bitok employed 20 clerks, permanent clerks. None of them comes from the north. None of them comes from the refugee hosting areas. They are all split up between Kalenjins and other so-called shareholding communities of this government. So, we want to say, UNHCR, the community will not accept this any longer. We are telling the Kenya government, under none other than the president himself, move fast. Send in your own team to investigate these things and do the needful. I am sure, and we are all sure, the president has not given the green light to condone that kind of a discrimination which is being done on our people up there. The government, along with the UN bodies, have got to initiate also processes in the soonest possible way to make sure that the roads that have been destroyed over the years, that we get a tarmac road all the way from Garissa to the places we mentioned.
Government refugee policy is managed by UNHCR. There is no any other country in the world where the refugee policy is managed by UNHCR. DRS is funded by UNHCR. It has to do everything that has been given and ordered to by UNHCR. UNHCR has requested for camps to be opened. They were given camp. Kenya government said yes, yet they are not operating. UNHCR have requested for all sorts of help from Kenya government, and Kenya government said yes. We have never gotten as host communities our shares. The only time, I underline, the Kenyan government put its foot down when they have said we want to close the camps. That time UNHCR came to them, and the only time you got help from UNHCR was that time, where they given us a program called KDEC to Deep. And that program itself is a loan to the people of Kenya. Small and loan, a kitty loan. UNHCR have defined for Kenya government refugee affected areas to mean 50 kilometers. Nowhere else in the world is refugee affected areas only 50 kilometers square. In Pakistan, the whole of Peshawar and Zawahir province is considered as refugee affected areas. UNHCR have told Kenya government we are going to help you give scholarships. What's called Elimu scholarship, which is 4,000 in number. And they said we are only going to give host community 150, the rest is going to the refugee community. Kenya government is not getting its share of the resources it needs from UNHCR. billions of money have gone down that place. As we speak today, the only operating airstrip in northern Kenya is the Dadaab refugee camp. No plane from Kenya can land there without the clearance of UNHCR security officers, as we speak. Even if we want to give help, we have to get a clearance from UNHCR Dadaab.
Good morning. I'm the County MP Garissa, and I stand by the statement by the leadership of Garissa. We are all here, apart from two, who are also out of the six. I think we are four here, and they also stand by this statement. It's not one-sided. It's for the whole county. I don't understand that the UNHCR have funds to cater for the host community plus the refugees, but they are doing nothing. It's only boardroom affairs. They call people, do their own thing. There's no public engagement on this. And unfortunately, we have floods now. The UNHCR and the Refugee Council have not done anything for the host community. At least they will have managed the roads, as my brothers have said. There is no road to the Dadaab, it's cut off. And as Fafi MP said, if you want to go to the Dadaab now, you have to have permission to land in the Dadaab. So I wonder, are we the refugees or we are the host of the refugees? Are we the one who hosting them, or is UNHCR hosting the leadership of Garissa County and its people? So with this, we say they better come clean. They want to bring a bill to JLAC. I'm a member of JLAC. The Deputy Speaker, Farah Malim, is also a member of JLAC. We will shoot everything down until our demands are met. That is the statement. We stand by it. And if there is anything that they want to tell, let them tell the leadership of Garissa County and have public participation on the ground. About recruitment, how can you recruit someone who doesn't even know, who has never hosted refugees? We have been with them for over 30 years. We know what's happening. I think the recruitment will be from people from the north, not necessarily from Garissa, but at least from Turkana and the rest of the northern counties. Hosting communities. We don't mind a Turkana being recruited. We don't mind any, but not people who have never hosted refugees and don't know the problems. That is nepotism.
Members of the press, as have been said by my colleagues, that it's a long time since this refugee issue was with us. Over 30 years we've been hosting the refugee community in Garissa County. Unfortunately, I think the UNHCR and the UN bodies have been taking advantage of our silence as leaders of the region. As have been said, there is total destruction of our environment as a result of hosting the communities of refugees. 30 years. At one point, UNHCR was actually giving tenders to people to go and cut trees so that they can be supplied to the refugees. You can imagine you being paid to go and destroy the environment. And while the government and the world is now planting trees, UNHCR is still encouraging the use of firewood by the refugees. The environment within the refugee complex, that is the Dadaab and Fafi constituencies, is totally destroyed. And that is why we have these flash floods. This is why we have all these droughts coming, recurring every now and then. And those who are in charge of actually protecting the environment are actually encouraging and paying for the destruction of our environment. The Urshirika plan was not properly talked about. There was no total engagement of, there was no engagement of leadership of the region and the people themselves, the host communities, who are the victims of this destruction, who are the victims of this neglect over the years. Garissa Dadaab Road is about 100 kilometers. UNHCR has been using, and World Food Program have been using that road only for food transportation. But their personnel travel by air. And they have built for themselves an airstrip within the camp. So you can imagine all the other destruction that is being caused by the heavy lifts of food products and petroleum products on the road. They have not considered it. That is why we cannot today access the Dadaab as people. So you can imagine the neglect of the UNHCR, and it is because we have been silent, we have been tolerating them for so far too long. Now it is high time we sat down with the leader. They sat down with the leadership of the region not necessarily only the county. There are other elected leaders who have more influence and more impact, and we are being questioned by our people, those who elected us also, why this is happening. How come we have 6 commissioners recruited and none is from the region? How come 70 of people are recruited for the purpose of refugee affairs and none of us is represented in that recruitment, that employment? So I think we need to sit down with Professor Bitok and his team and UNHCR so that we give direction. Otherwise, the Shirika plan is as good as failed. We will not accept it as it is. Thank you very much.